Hi everyone, we're now back in the Codelab, and this time we're going to do an index.html walkthrough. What it means is that we've got an index.html file. This file is what we send from our Node.js server to the browser, and this is where the browser code is actually located. And what we're going to look at is the structure of the file. We'll do the signaling part in our later lessons. So Fippo, can we take a peek at the code?
Yes, let's do that. So we have a very simple file. It's just a single file that is served by the signaling/application server in our case. And it has three big blocks. First is HTML elements, like video elements. And we have a set of styles, which is CSS, and we have a JavaScript block inline.
Okay, and why did we decide to do it in a single file and not like, index.html, style CSS, and then the JavaScript code for the signaling separately?
Because it's much simpler. I mean, we didn't want to discuss how to do web development really, and in production it will be quite different in terms of setup. So we just went for a single file. We only have to serve a single file in the signaling server, which makes things a bit more easy.
Okay, so the idea was, and the intent was to keep it as simple as possible, to make it very useful for learning.
Yes.
Okay.
And in production, you would do a very different approach, like serving HTML from a CDN, serving a bundle containing all your JavaScript files generated by Webpack, serving that from the CDN. And in production, you don't have the signaling server serving any HTML or JavaScript or CSS.
Okay. And I see also that there is the first thing that you do here is call a script, include an adapter.js file.
Yes, adapter is a polyfill that started in 2012 when there were lots of differences between the browsers, like different prefixes. Chrome only had WebKit RTC peer connection, Firefox only had Moz RTC peer connection, and adapter was polyfilling that and providing a way forward to let you write code that is spec compliant and doesn't have these prefixes.
And I guess that today does the same for less things, but it still reduces a lot of the headaches.
Yes. I mean, the prefix differences are gone these days, but there are still minor differences in behavior. And adapter, where possible, it just takes care of them. So you don't have to worry about that and can just write code like you should be writing it for, given what's in the specification. Okay. Also, it lets you adapt your code to different browsers, running in different browsers. It has detection for Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Microsoft Edge, and things like that.
Okay.
So after that, we have a big block containing all the styles that we use. We use a CSS grid layout, which is a very fancy way to create a layout. We're going to jump over that. And the next thing we have is a big block with HTML elements. We have the local video here, which is going to autoplay. It is muted, and for Safari, it has the place inline attribute. Okay,
and why did we decide to mute it?
Because if you don't mute it, you have the sound that's captured by your microphone playing out from your speakers, which is going into your microphone again, and it's going to create a horrible echo noise.
Okay. Okay, and then that was on the left side on the screen, and for the right side, we've got the second video container, which is a remote video.
Yes, auto-playing again, plays inline, but no muted attribute, because we want to hear what the remote end has to say.
Not always. Okay. Then there's the bunch of buttons, and that's about the whole page, right?
Yes, we have buttons, we have our own client ID, we have the peer ID, and we have a hang up button here. And the next thing we have is the JavaScript. Okay. Which here starts by looking up event listeners for the buttons, but we're going to skip over that for now. So we jump to the end of the file, which is where we are actually, or where the browser starts executing the code.
Okay.
So we get the initial hash from the URL. It might be empty if we just went to the page and didn't copy a full URL containing the hash sum ID, which is how we decide to call someone else.
Okay, but we'll leave that to the signaling side.
Yes. So the first thing we do is we get the camera and then connect to the signaling, just for the sake of simplicity. So we call our very thin wrapper on get user media, which returns a stream. And then we store that stream in the local stream variable, so we have access to it when we want to mute audio or video. And then we connect to the signaling server.
Okay, so what we did was loaded the page. Once the page loads, we access the camera to do get user media. We receive the streams once the user allows them, and we store them in local variable that we use wherever. And we'll probably see that in other lessons.
Yes.
Okay. Can we go into the get user media function itself?
Yes. It's a very simple function. It just calls the navigator media devices get user media API, sets the local video source object to the stream, and returns the stream.
Okay, and we decided on no constraints and to have both audio and video here.
Yes. And we didn't even check if WebRTC was available. We just assumed it is. In production, you would need to check that navigator media devices is a thing, which, for example, it is not on HTTP. So if you simply deploy the sample to a production server on HTTP, it would not work at all.
Okay. Okay. Now, one last thing. We have the local video and the remote video, and they are different. We've seen in the sample that if I raise my hand, it looks reverse or flipped between them. How do we handle that? How do we make sure that it works like that?
Okay, let's demonstrate that actually. So I've loaded the page in Firefox. I'm using a fake device because my camera is blocked by chatting with you. And you can see
put this on full screen?
I can make it larger.
Yes,
like
and
this.
zoom a bit. Yes.
Yes, so you can see these dots moving here on the right. And that's actually mirrored from what the normal behavior is. And we can use the Firefox CSS inspector to look at the local video element. And we can see here that there is a transform on the local video element. Okay. And we can actually disable that. And if we do that, the video moves to the left, or the dots move to the left. That's where they are originally. Okay.
Can we see them just in the code? Because it's like very small fonts over there.
Yes. So we're looking for hash local video. It's a transform. It's a scale is -1,1. So the exact scale is just -1, which flips the video.
Okay, so we've looked at the index.html file. We've split it into 3. CSS, HTML, JavaScript. We went into the JavaScript part. We looked at the get user media, because that's like a kind of what you'll do in HTML in a way. Then in the get user media, we've dealt with the constraints, the local stream, all of that crap. And we've seen that the local view needs to be dealt slightly differently in the CSS. All the rest is pure HTML, CSS web development.
Exactly.
Okay. So thank you for being in this lesson. In the next one, we're going to start looking at the signaling and what goes on there.
Thank you, Zahi.